PTF and JK back with you. The Triple Crown season is in the books. We're on the verge of the summer meets. That means our attention is turning to the Breeders' Cup. We've had a bunch of Breeders' Cup win and you're in races already with more to come. JK, in this video, we're going to talk about our top 10 horses we're looking forward to, but it's almost like a gimmick. It's really more of a discussion of the moments that we're looking forward to, the races we're looking forward to. Does that sound about right to you?
I love the Breeders' Cup because you get all of these horses together. So it can't just be about one. I can't be excited about one horse without being excited about the horse that's lining up in the gate next to them. That's what we're trying to get here, get you excited about some of the moments that we might see this November.
And don't be surprised, Breeders' Cup, it's amazing. We're excited about all 14 races, but we're going to be tilted towards the Breeders' Cup Classic. It is the major race and one this year that's going to bring in a ton of international participation. So be ready throughout this video for lots of conversation. We want you to get involved and help us out. Get in the comments. We've had great discussions going back and forth in comments lately. And let us know what horses you're most looking forward to seeing at the Breeders' Cup. Are we out to lunch? Are we missing some great storylines? Are we on the right track? Either way, let us know. And the other thing you can do to help us out is to subscribe to our In the Money Media YouTube channel. We are so close to that 10,000 subscriber goal. We're already thinking about the next goal, but go ahead and help us out. Subscribe, click that notification bell so you never miss an episode. And also tell your friends. We want to be part of a racing community. We need you to be ambassadors for us if you would be so kind. We're going to start off with a runner who participated very recently. We're going to take a look now at Shareholder winning the Win and You're In Norfolk Stakes at Royal Ascot. This runner has punched his ticket for the Juvenile Turf Sprint already. Given this pedigree, there may be some other potential targets as well. JK, what did you think of Shareholder back at Royal Ascot?
Yeah, look, it was impressive. I've long been a believer that these European horses are at a disadvantage playing the 2-year-old turf sprint game against us. But I will say this about Shareholder. Mischief Magic did it. And just maybe, as I think some of our horses are getting a little bit more accustomed to running competitively against the long-distance turf horses, I think their short, young turf horses are starting to become a little bit more accustomed to our game as well. So looking forward to seeing Shareholder on that Friday, Future Stars Friday.
And you mentioned Mischief Magic, who ran down Dramatized, same trainer, Carl Burke, who trained Shareholder, maybe hoping to go one better in this year's Juvenile Turf Sprint. Or who knows, again, being by not this time, a horse, they might decide to try the dirt. We'll see what happens. Let's get to number 9. We mentioned that we're going to be talking about the Classic a lot in this one. This horse was last seen running at Saratoga, Arthur's Ride. I know you were very impressed by this runner and think he might have a Breeders' Cup future.
Look, when you have a horse for Bill Mott, who on a racetrack in which the races like the Whitney and the Jockey Club Gold Cup are held, and you have a horse that runs a triple-digit figure like Arthur's Ride did, you got to start thinking about this horse pointing towards the Classic as a long-term goal. And if he can continue to improve off of those performances, I think he could be dangerous. I'd like to think that we'll see him in the Whitney showing up against another horse that might show up on this list a little bit later. But I think Arthur's Ride for Bill Mott is definitely one to keep an eye on when you're thinking about the Classic.
Have this one on your radar for sure. Annually, one of the most exciting Breeders' Cup races is the Breeders' Cup Sprint. This is another runner who's been in action very recently, who I know he's rocketing up your board as a potential contender in this race, JK. The name is Raging Torrent. What do you like about this one?
It's funny, Pete, when I sent you this list of horses we could potentially use, I sent it before he did what he did in the Maxfield Stakes. This is a horse for Doug O'Neill that I can't wait to see on Travers Day, hopefully in the Allen Jerkins, one of my favorite races of the entire summer, if not my favorite race of the entire summer. If he continues to progress like it looks like he is and continues to improve as he grows up as a 3-year-old, he could make some noise cutting back. I would think it'd be cutting back at that point, running in all these 7 furlong races for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. And the boys division of the Sprint just seems a little bit lighter than it has been in the past, right? We had the Matolis, we've had the Sharp Ass Tekkas, we've had lots of different types of horses that were superstars in that arena. We don't really have that yet. I think it's ripe for the taking, and it could be one that Raging Torrent could be interested in taking.
The Filly and Mare Sprint is looking like an absolute war. That's a phrase I may use more than one time in this video, given how all these divisions are shaping up. I think you got to give Vava the respect with the more than one grade one win to this point as we take a look at Vava getting the job done. But this is one of these where we can't just talk about one horse. We've got to talk about at least three with the impressive performances we've seen in this division.
Yeah, we'll see what happens this weekend with the Victory Ride. There's also some 3-year-old fillies sprinting this weekend at Belmont at Aqueduct that look like they could be talented. Well, look, Vava is definitely the leader of the clubhouse, right? She's got that good night olive feel where she is the best sprinter. She's going to be dominant at these 7 furlong distances from what we've already seen. But there is, like you mentioned, some 3-year-olds waiting in the wings, likely favorite for the test, Ways and Means. Who showed a ton of talent as a 2-year-old, unfortunately was injured, so didn't get to have like a full 3-year-old campaign. But now she's back, and she seems to be pointed in the right direction with an impressive win in the test. I think we could see an absolute collision course in the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint between Vava and Ways and Means. And hey, let's not forget about Almost Gone Rocket, who was also impressive during that Belmont Stakes Racing Festival. I'd imagine she'll show up in the test as well. But these 3-year-old fillies are all waiting in the wings, but they got to catch up to the older mare, Vava.
Let's talk about the turf sprint, another race I'm very excited about. We saw Cogburn back in that Belmont Racing Festival at Saratoga, looking awfully impressive, breaking the clock that day. We'll show tape of that, but this one we're going to do a little bit of double duty as well. We'll bring in a second replay, but first I want to give you a chance to opine on Cogburn.
Well, this next comment might make some horse players' teeth itch a little bit here, but I think that turf sprints can be some of the most formful races in racing, especially when you have a dominant horse like I think we might have now in Cogburn. 111 Beyer speed figure the other day was outstanding at Saratoga. Seems to be really trending in the right direction. He's got tactical speed. He pops away from there. He's with a Hall of Fame trainer that knows his way around sprinters. I think Cogburn is going to take a world of beating from what we've seen from him so far this year.
I like the confidence, but I will say, keep your eyes out. And this is the other one we'll roll some tape on back from Royal Ascot again in the King Charles III Stakes. Asphora, this Australian sprinter, was interesting. Heading into the King Charles, I spoke to several Aussies who said, this is maybe the fourth, fifth best sprinter back home. They didn't necessarily expect a winning performance, or certainly not one as convincing as we saw on the course. But Asphora did the business there, leaving maybe the trainers of the other top Australian sprinters wondering if they shouldn't have been the ones to go to Royal Ascot. Here's the thing. We don't often see cross participation from Australia in the Breeders' Cup because it's during the Melbourne Carnival, huge racing down there. But Asphora is a different kind of beast. This one wants 5 furlongs and not a hair over 5 furlongs. There isn't a race like that at the Melbourne Carnival. There will be at a Del Mar Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. I think Asphora is one to watch in there for sure. We're halfway through our list. Just going to take a moment now to let you know that the best way to keep track of all our coverage, not just on our YouTube channel, but across the In the Money Media Network, is to subscribe to our free newsletter, inthemoneypodcast.com/email. That's going to let you know about the free tips and analysis we're giving away daily over at inthemoneypodcast.com, as well as everything we've got cooking on the podcast side. Subscribe to In the Money Players Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and do that email, inthemoneypodcast.com/email. You'll get all our stuff, and hopefully you'll enjoy that. Let's get back to this list, Jonathan. Going to number 5, we're going to talk a little bit about the Breeders' Cup Classic again, focusing specifically on the domestic 3-year-olds. You could have put a bunch of different names in this spot. You certainly could have put Sierra Leone. We ended up picking Mindframe as potentially the 3-year-old domestic horse we think has the most potential to step up and be a player in the Classic. Do you feel like that's the right decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got the most upside at this point, right? What we've seen from Mindframe. He ran in the Belmont Stakes in his 3rd career start. And if it wasn't for a little bit of a right-handed turn following a left-handed crop, I think he might have been the winner of that Belmont Stakes. So you got a Hall of Famer in Todd Pletcher. You got a future Hall of Famer in Irad Ortiz. I feel like they'll get to the bottom of what Mindframe's issue was in the stretch that day. And he should be tough moving forward. He's got a very high ceiling. But he's got a couple of other friends in his stable that he might have to worry about fierceness. You can't ignore what he did as a 2-year-old, the 2-year-old champion, what he did earlier this year in the Florida Derby. He could take another step forward. And then let's not forget about Sierra Leone, okay, another one who has kind of been his own worst enemy. And if he can find a way to get his issues resolved, he also could be one that could be making noise late. I think these 3-year-olds could turn out to be a pretty darn good group once it's all said and done. I understand that there's been different winners of all 3 legs of the Triple Crown. I think it's going to be a late summer statement from these 3-year-olds.
Let's talk about National Treasure. This is the horse that I would have guessed, Jonathan, might have been the favorite in the anti-post pools for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Not so. There's a whole host of horses above him, seeing prices between 10 to 1 and 20 to 1 on National Treasure for the Breeders' Cup Classic. But this is a horse who's run very fast, and the hands he's in, I don't think he can be discounted. I'm looking forward to what he might do in a race like this. Where do you stand with National Treasure?
National Treasure was sensational in the Met Mile. And I think the thing about National Treasure, and he was really good in the Pegasus as well. I think one of the things about National Treasure that stands out when you think about him is that he's kind of taking that no prisoners approach that you can sometimes see from some of these Bob Baffert runners. And I think those are the most dangerous ones because they make their own trips. There's nothing you can do to get in the way of a horse like that says, yeah, I'm going to go as fast as I can. You want to come with me? And I think that could be something that could really help National Treasure throughout the rest of the year. And we already know the distance isn't necessarily going to be an issue for him, right? He is the winner of a classic race in the Preakness, going 1 mile and 3/16. So as the races get a little bit longer, it's possible the National Treasure might get a little bit better.
It'll be interesting to see. He did win a win and you're in race for the dirt mile, but I, like you, think he's probably leaning classic. It feels like the market maybe hasn't fully cottoned to that with the fact that he's the price that he is. I suppose if they think he doesn't want to go that far, he could run in the dirt mile as an alternative. Do you think that would be a mistake?
Absolutely. You won the Met Mile. You don't need to win the dirt mile, right? You won the Met Mile. And I think that if you're looking at what's probably next for National Treasure, which is a career as a daddy, you'd think that getting a classic on that resume would really increase his interest from breeders.
2 horses in the betting for the Breeders' Cup Classic are Japanese based. The one that I'm listing here as the one I'm most looking forward to running is Forever Young. We'll take a look back at his big run in Saudi that earned an estimated, I should say, over 100 Beyer speed figure, came back in the Kentucky Derby. Many think that he would have had an opportunity to win that race with a clean run. He'll have grown up in the intervening time. We saw how the other Japanese runner we're going to talk about in this quick segment, Derma Sotogake, we saw how he grew up between the Triple Crown races and the Classic at the end of the year, where he was second last year. What do you think of the chances of the likes of Forever Young and Derma Sotogake, the Japanese invaders? And we may see many more Japanese invaders too, given the success they had the last time the Breeders' Cup was at Del Mar. But what do you think of these 2 as classic contenders?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at these, if you watch the Breeders' Cup these last couple of years, you've seen these Japanese runners show up and run well. And you'd like to think that a horse like Forever Young, who ran as well as he did in the Kentucky Derby as a 3-year-old, is going to continue to improve and continue to get better. He was right there with Sierra Leone. He was right there in front of some other horses like Dornoch, who went on to win the Belmont Stakes. So we know he's got some talent. If he can continue to improve, he's one of those other 3-year-olds from overseas that could be making noise late in the year as well.
International competition abounds at the Breeders' Cup. It's a little bit like the Olympics of horse racing in that regard. It's one of the things we love. We've talked about the Japanese. We've talked about the Australians. Let's talk about the Irish. Very interesting here. Auguste Rodin and City of Troy. It sounds like they will both be coming. It sounds like and looks like, according to the betting, that City of Troy is going to be targeting the Classic, meaning maybe Auguste Rodin will come back and run in the Breeders' Cup Turf again. Auguste Rodin did just win a win in your in race for the Turf at Ascot in the form of the Prince of Wales's run that we'll be taking an eye on here. In his career to this point, Auguste Rodin has been a little bit of an in and outer. He's had some inexplicably bad runs. He's also had some great runs, including his win at the Breeders' Cup Turf last year. Maybe he's growing up. Maybe he's going to be a more consistent beast going forward. If so, he'd be interesting in either race, I should say, tricky to take on in either race. But Auguste Rodin, I think it'd be a cool storyline seeing him go for a second Breeders' Cup Turf in a row. What do you think his chances would be?
Yeah, look, I really like the idea that at some point one of these Irish horses, one of these European horses, is going to find a way to win this Breeders' Cup Classic, right? I mean, they run in all of these long distance turf races. They're immaculately bred. At some point, it's going to happen. City of Troy and Augusta Ronan have shown a ton of talent already. I always like when they come over and get in the mix. It adds for a very interesting angle when you're trying to handicap the Classic. And while I'm happy to see them running the turf and to be singleable horses in the turf, I do like the challenge of seeing them show up in the dirt race in the Classic.
And City of Troy being by Justify, he really does make sense for the Classic for them to try that, especially with what he's already achieved. He's already worth a fortune with big races as a 2-year-old. He's shown precocity. He's a Derby winner. To go on and win the Classic, he would be something very near the order of the flavor of the month in a good way for breeding purposes, should he be able to get that job done. Who knows? Maybe Coolmore with these two will be able to sweep the turf and the Classic. I certainly wouldn't put it past them. Number one on our list. This is a funny one because we had to pick one horse to be number one, but it's really not about the one horse we picked, though that horse, Idiomatic, is really cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing how she gets on. Last year's winner in this race, but this is one that's really more about the division, I think it's fair to say. JK, take us through your thoughts on this year's Breeders' Cup Distaff.
Yeah, look, Idiomatic is the defending champion of this race and this division, so you have to give her the first nod here. But I will say this: it's not just about Idiomatic, right? She was beat by Randomized, who seems to be really improving. 3-year-old turning 4 and 1 going in the right direction. But you also have to be really excited about Torpedo Anna, who it sounds like it's going to run in the Coaching Club American Oaks, and then they say she might run in the Travers, which is going to be extremely interesting if that happens. I'm more of an Alabama guy myself, but the idea that in November in San Diego at Del Mar, we have a chance to see these 3 horses get in the same starting gate together and run a mile and an eighth, less than half a mile away from the ocean, gets me pretty excited.
Great stuff. We'll be covering the Breeders' Cup thoroughly, not just here, but also on our Horse Player Happy Hour. That's a live stream, live on Thursdays between 4 and 6 p.m. And you can play for just $20. You have 3 ways to win a $10,000 Breeders' Cup betting challenge seat, and the house cut goes to charity. Go to horseplayers.com to join us there. For JK, I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos.